Good morning. Today is Monday, September the 19th, and this is microeconomics. There are about 18 out of the 56 students present today. Numbers are much diminished. Why do you suppose that is? Say again? Yeah, Friday evening, about 8 o'clock or so, I checked, and I think out of the 56 students enrolled in micro, 14 had taken the exam. Which means most of them are taking it today, which means this morning they are involved, I think, in one of two activities, maybe both. Activity number one is called desperate, panic-stricken study. And activity number two is called prayer. And you'll see the results later today. So, my first opening remark to you is a cautionary word. Do not rely upon Canvas to tell you how you're doing in this course. It may show you your numerical score, or Connect will at least, but Canvas is dangerous. Canvas may show you your numerical score, but Canvas does not compute letter grades the way I do. I take each exam and set a separate curve to it based on the distribution of scores. So Canvas can't figure that out. So if it tries to tell you you've got a 92% or a 64%, it's wrong. It is categorically wrong every single time, and usually it overstates your grade, and that can be misleading. I will send you a spreadsheet after each exam, listing you by Santa Fe ID number, showing you your numerical score and your letter grade for each exam. That is what I rely upon when I set grades at the end of the term. So do not rely on Canvas as an indicator. If you have questions about that spreadsheet or your standing, by all means, send me an email and we'll clarify it. Now, the exam closes tonight at 7. I will be tomorrow working up that spreadsheet, and perhaps Wednesday before you see it. And that will show you whatever your numerical score, it will show you what your letter grade is. And there is always some degree of curve on the exams. Typically, for example, A's reach down to around 85%. B's reach down to around 75%, something like that. The C range is usually a little bit larger. Okay, that's the exam so far. Your comments or questions, the exam or anything else of a general nature? Anything you want to talk about?
How about those Giants?
How about those Giants? Tell me what happened. You sound absolutely surprised and awestruck.
My Giants haven't been good in a while, so I'm happy this morning.
I'm a strong supporter of football and afternoon sports because it keeps people off of my lakes when I try to go fishing. But absent that, I don't watch the scores too closely. I did see that Florida State got high-ass whipped. I mean, Florida State got beat soundly.
Louisville, real deal.
Apparently so. I don't know if even Louisville knew that.
Oh,
It's not just Louisville, it's Lamar Jackson.
Exactly.
That's all it is.
You see him?
He's the quarterback?
Yeah, and he
run
has
two
like,
touchdowns?
I think he has 19, 18 touchdowns in 3 games.
Wow.
I played against him my senior year of high school, and he's remarkable. I mean, he was making, we lost 42-0.
Wow.
He was just amazing.
They made FSU first.
Yeah.
He's real good.
Never hurts my feelings to see FSU whipped.
All's right in the world to get.
Yeah, you know, who are you voting for? Who's playing FSU? Now, we pick on FSU, but, you know, hell, I pick on the school down the street, too. You know, FU down there, a UF down there. Yeah.
Tennessee, yeah.
What about Tennessee?
Play them this
Saturday.
Are they they're not that good, are they?
We've been in the last 17 years, right?
It's gonna be, it should be 12 this year, but they have so much off-season hype, and now they just suck.
Well, you'll say they're mostly hype.
Yeah.
Okay, that's cool. I watch a little bit of college ball, but
What's your sport?
The one thing, the two things I enjoy doing personally are fishing and a little bit of bird hunting, dove or duck.
Those innocent doves.
I'm sorry?
Those innocent doves.
Hey, they fry up mighty fine. You take the dove and you just take out the breast meat, pan fry it in butter, and you put it into the oven over some rice, some brown rice and some mushroom gravy. Serve that up with some bread and some nice Merlot wine. It's pretty fine.
Anyway's good too.
Try it.
Thing about dove is you got to hit them first. You figure a box of shells is 20 shells, and I think the average hunter gets about 2 dove per box.
You shotgun?
Yeah.
What a
12 gauge and bird shot, 7, 8. They jink and jive and do that.
I want to go. I have a 12 gauge, but I usually use double eye buck. It's
Not on dove.
no.
Boom! Like shooting sporting clays. Boom! Yeah. My other sport used to be soccer. I refereed for many years. But I'd a whole lot rather just sit out on the lake and enjoy the quiet. There is a phrase called mushin, I think is the term in Japanese, mushin. We kind of phrase it in America in business books. It's called in the flow. Familiar with that term? Get in flow. It's when you are mentally so involved in something, you lose track of what's going on around you. You lose track of time, and you are just totally absorbed. That's what happens to me when I'm fishing, particularly if I'm casting and trying to be accurate and work that lure real slow. I'll get out on a lake and I'll spend an hour and look up and, damn, and I'll have another beer and go after it again. So what's on your mind?
Elasticity.
Elasticity. I can present to you elasticity in a matter of an hour. And in fact, that's what those videos are that you have to watch. But absent working many, many problems with them, it's hard to make it stick. There are some calculations involved. You need to do those calculations again and again and again and again and again. You need to, and I went to another textbook and created an assignment on Connect. It's called Elasticity Review or something like that. I tried to give you a whole bunch of questions just to keep going over and over and over. The other advice I would have to you is take whatever questions you have and design your own question similar to that. Trade those questions with somebody else and practice doing the work. Not just the calculations, the concepts too. So we'll go ahead and dive into elasticities now unless somebody has anything else administratively or more generically to talk about. Nope. Okay. This again is primarily what you find on the videos. So we're going to talk about elasticity, and we're going to talk first about what's called price elasticity, which I symbol with I represent with a symbol kind of an E. Elasticity is asking about how responsive the market is. If the price of gasoline, I saw it today for $2.06. If the price of gasoline dropped to $1.95, how much more gasoline would people buy? A lot more or just a little? A lot? Why would you buy a lot more? What would you be doing? You want to drive more than you do now?
You want to go on vacation?
Maybe.
I could go hunting all the way across Alabama.
Not too damn far. One of my other restrictions about sports is that I don't want to look too hard at it or drive too far to get to it. What if the price of liquor dropped from an average of $15 for a fifth to $10 for a fifth? Would people buy a lot more liquor?
Not more alcoholic.
Would you? How much more would they buy? Would they buy a whole lot more alcohol or just a little?
A little bit more.
A little bit more?
Well, it depends on the person.
I'm talking about the markets, the market generally, the average person.
Don't they already have a 12 pack for like $10 sometimes?
Good. If they put a 12-pack of beer on sale for $10, do they sell a whole lot more beer or just some more beer? I don't know. Let me turn it around. If the price of gasoline went from $2.06 to $2.16 next week, would that cause you to decrease your amount of gasoline you buy?
No, you don't say now.
You'd still buy the same amount?
Gotta drive.
So you're not very responsive to the price there. You're going to keep buying.
10 cents.
How about if it went from $2.06 to $4.06?
Oh, you gonna buy it.
Would you cut back?
Yeah. I ain't going higher than
Oh,
that.
you're lying. You're lying to me. What would you do? You'd start drinking cheap beer and cutting back on the other expenses because you'd still have to drive. Would you cut back the amount of gasoline you buy? Yes. Would you cut it back by a lot?
No.
I don't think you could.
You need to work.
So elasticity is, if the price changes, how much do you change your purchasing behavior? That's kind of important to know, certainly from a business perspective. Because if I take my beer and I put it on sale at a very low price, so I'm not making as much money each time I sell a beer. Well, if I sell a hell of a lot more beer, that's good. But if I don't sell but just a little bit more beer, I lost money. You see what I'm saying? So this is what we're after. So as a result, we're going to talk about the price elasticity of demand. There is a price elasticity of supply. We'll get there later. So this is about the price elasticity of demand, little d. And in initial simplistic terms, we have extremes. We have a demand curve that is almost vertical. We have a demand curve that is almost horizontal. And in the first case, we call this an inelastic demand. And what that means is buyers are not very responsive to price changes. And to demonstrate that, let's look at point A and point B on that demand curve. At point A, I'm making up some numbers here, the price is $100 and people buy 10 units per day. That's point A. At point B, we've dropped the price to $12, and now people buy 11 units per day. Price didn't make a hell of a lot of difference to them, did it? They're going to continue to buy about the same amount. And if you look at it the other way, what if you raise the price? You started selling it at $12. You sold 11 of them every day. You raised the price to $100, and they still bought 10 of them every day. What would you think about that? I would think it's good news if I'm the seller, right? Because at $100, I'm making a hell of a lot more money. Why would they keep paying that high price?
It's a necessity.
One possibility is it's a necessity. It's insulin for a diabetic. Okay? A very necessary thing. What makes the demand for a product inelastic? One thing is, if it is a necessity, not a luxury. What do we know about luxuries? You don't have to have those. They're nice to have, but you don't have to have them. What else could make the demand very inelastic? There's no substitute for it. No or few substitutes. If you're diabetic, there aren't too many substitutes for that insulin when you need it. Okay. Can you think of another example where there's no or few substitutes? Cigarettes? How about gasoline? How about gasoline? How many substitutes for gasoline are there? Shoe Leather Express, right? Catch the bus. Not very acceptable substitutes to a lot of folks. A third thing that'll make the demand very, very inelastic. If you have very little time to purchase or search, little time to search. When you need something in a hurry. The gas gauge on your your car is pegging at E for empty. The light's been on, you've been driving for 80 miles. You come up on a gas station, and gasoline today is for sale for $5.22. How many gallons you want? You're going to pay $5.22. You may not buy a lot of gasoline, but by God, you're going to buy some gasoline. How much gasoline would you buy?
As much to get you home.
As little as I could to make sure I got home. Okay? You don't have a lot of time to look around. You're out of gas. Okay? Fourth one, last one. When you buy something that costs you only a small percentage of your income or your budget. My favorite example of that is if you drink martinis at home. You know how to fix a martini? Anybody? How?
Well, it depends on how you like it. Do you want it dirty?
Dry and dirty. Dry and dirty on the rocks.
Vodka or gin?
Vodka or gin. I don't drink gin, so
Vodka, 2.5 ounces vodka.
2.5 ounces of vodka.
About a 3/4 of an ounce of sweet vermouth and an ounce of
3/4 of an ounce of sweet vermouth and
a dry vermouth, sorry, and about
Dry-
an ounce of
dry
olive
vermouth.
juice.
about an ounce of olive juice over rocks, over ice cubes. Does anything else go into that martini?
Olives if you want.
If you have any culture whatsoever, you put an olive or 3 on a
Skewer.
toothpick skewer. And in fact, I have skewers they're little small ones. You just fit 3 olives on it, shaped like a sword, made out of gold. Really cool looking. And that's how you drink a martini. That's how you fix a martini.
Regular blue cheese.
And regular or blue cheese olives, I'm kind of easy to get along with that way. Before I bought these nice skewers, though, I always bought wooden toothpicks. But I still firmly believe no one with any culture at all ever drinks a martini without some toothpicks on a skewer in the glass. I mean, to do so without that is just crude. Where are you from? Now, that means periodically I run out of toothpicks. That's a serious problem. How much do you suppose a box of toothpicks costs me when I go to Publix? $2?
99.
99 cents?
Say $1.
$1? 99 cents. Ooh, you guys, that was a lot of thought, yeah. Would you believe $2.19 a box?
Really?
I don't know.
How much are the swords?
The damn swords I bought on eBay, they weren't cheap.
They're reusable.
They certainly are. They have been reused. My point is this. When I needed wooden toothpicks and I walked into Publix, I walked down the aisle, I saw wooden toothpicks, I put them in the box and the cart, and I kept marching. I didn't look at the price. They may have been $1. They may have been 99 cents. They may have been 89 or 79 cents. They may have been $2.19. I don't give a damn. Why? Hey, I needed it, but more importantly,
It didn't cost too much.
that is such a small part of my income It didn't matter what the price was. I'll have one. Oh, hell, I'll get backup. I get two. When it's a small percentage of your income, you don't tend to pay attention to high prices. And if you are the grocery store manager, how do you take advantage of that?
You increase the price.
You sell $2.19 toothpicks. If you think most of your customers don't care, why would you sell them 99 cents worth of toothpicks? Okay so far? So one of the first lessons coming out of elasticity is if we can understand our market and what they're looking for and what's important to them, we can make more money. If we can understand who is it buying our toothpicks that has an inelastic demand, and we can get them to come in our store, we can charge them a higher price.
At like Publix or Wendy's or wherever, would a place like Gainesville, a college town, increase like alcohol or anything like that more than you would say Portland, Maine, or more older?
Let me ask you this. When you go out for the night, you going downtown to the clubs or whatever, and you're going to have a drink, how important is the price of the drink?
That depends on how much
Keep going. Depends on how much what?
you're trying to have a good time.
How much you trying to get?
Do you know where Dragonfly is? Anybody? Dragonfly Sushi?
Yeah.
Oh, I love that place. They make an old fashioned down there that is just phenomenal. And I don't know what it costs. I think it cost about $8 a piece. But if I go down there and I have one, that's usually just fine. But if I'm in the mood for a second one, I don't know how much they cost, but I just look at it and I say, I want another old fashioned. What's my demand like for that old fashioned? Very inelastic. I don't care what the price is. What about students? Maybe after the second drink, they don't care what the price is?
You're going home.
They're going home. Well, that's kind of the question. At some point, they're going to go home. So are students, when it comes to the consumption of alcohol, is their demand fairly inelastic or elastic?
Inelastic.
I'm going to guess that their demand curve looks something like this. This is the number of drinks. This is the price. That their demand from 0 to $4, they will drink 4 drinks that night. And so that's just about what their demand curve looks like. Whether I charge 10 cents a drink or $4 a drink, I think they're going to drink about 4 drinks. And that if I charge above that, after the 4th drink, their demands are going to start getting very elastic. Okay? If I start charging up here, the demand curve is going to start getting flatter. Because at that point, they've had as many as they want. Maybe it looks like this. $10. How's that? $4. If I charge $4, I got no problem. If I charge $10, I maybe can sell the average student 1. If I charge $6, maybe he'll buy 2. If I charge $4, I can get him to buy the most. What's the best price to charge?
About $4.
Part of it depends on how much does the liquor cost me. And I've got to figure that out. But we know that as a general rule, when the price is very low, it doesn't really matter. That their demand is fairly inelastic. But when the price starts getting higher, their demand starts getting pretty sensitive, pretty elastic. That's true for everything. It's an important concept because when we look at a regular demand curve, it's not highly inelastic or highly elastic. Suppose it looks like this. Is that curve elastic or inelastic? And that's kind of the trick to a lot of this, is that part of this curve has a very inelastic demand. Part of this curve has a very elastic demand. Where do you suppose the elastic part is? At the higher prices. If you find the midpoint of this line, the very middle point, everywhere below that is going to be an inelastic demand. because at low prices, the demand is probably pretty inelastic. Any point above that, it's going to be a very elastic demand. Prices are high and people are sensitive. And understanding this, and we're going to take it apart, understanding this is kind of central to the idea of elasticity. We'll come back to that in a minute. Let's go draw that other demand curve for a second. The one that was real flat. Let's pick 2 points on it. A and B. What's going on there? Well, at a price of, let's say, $12, we sell 6. That's point A. And then we drop the price just a little bit, just a small change in the price. We drop the price to $11.50. What happened?
Sales.
We sold a lot more. I'm going to exaggerate the number. We sold 92 of them. Just a small little price change, and people bought the hell out of it. That's an elastic change. They're very sensitive to a price change. Price is really important here. Why might that happen? And it's generally the opposite of this list. Demand is elastic for luxuries. Price goes up a little bit, people say, I didn't need it that bad. When you have lots of substitutes, you raise the price of this, people say, well, there's all those others to buy, to heck with it. When I have lots of time to search, I'm not going to pay a high price. And if it takes up a large bit of my income, I'm going to be a lot more sensitive to the price. Okay so far? Now, all of that is common sense. You just got to think through it in terms of economics, in terms of the way we remember it. Now, the one with the whole demand curve up there, elastic and inelastic, set that aside for a minute. We're going to come back to it. What we're going to do instead right now is talk about how we actually measure the price elasticity of demand. Calculating the price elasticity of demand. And now I'm going to save you some misery. You ready? Do not try to learn this the way the book presents it. Every economics book I find presents it with an equation that I just think it's exactly what we're going to do, but they present it in a way that is just shamefully confusing. Okay? Here's what happens. The price elasticity of demand is going to be equal to the percentage change, okay, percentage delta, percentage change in the quantity demanded, divided by the percentage change in the price. And the book will show you that. Let's take an example. Let's take any old demand curve. Let's pick a price of $12, and then let's pick a price of $10. So that defines this part of the demand curve between the 2 points A and B. That's the price elasticity of demand over that part of the demand curve. And we need to know the quantities associated with it. At $12, we sell 80 units per day. And at $10, we sell 140 units per day. We need 2 points on the demand curve to do this calculation. because we're talking about the change in quantity from one quantity to another and the change in price. The key is here. How do you calculate the percentage change in quantity demanded? This way. It is the change in quantity demanded divided by the average quantity demanded. The same is true for price. The change in price divided by the average price. I think if you remember this with me this way, you don't have to worry with that stupid formula.
Which one is that one?
This is the easy way. This is the...
Okay.
Yeah, this is this. Look at this for a minute. Look at the demand curve. What's the change in quantity? When we go from A to B, what's the change in quantity? It goes from 80 to 40. The change is 60. What's the average quantity? What's the average between these two numbers? How do you get it? How do you find the average between these?
Add them and divide it by 2.
Add them and divide by 2. 140 and 80 is 220, divided by 2 is 110. The average is 110. Was that hard to calculate? Add them divided by 2. Average is 110. Do the same thing for price. What's the change in price? $2. What's the average price? $11. You can ballpark, I mean, you can eyeball that one, can't you? But if you wanted to add them up, 12 and 10 is 22, divided by 2 is 11. This is not rocket science. This is not calculus, is it? I'm pretty sure this is about 7th grade math. Okay so far? Now, you got 60 over 110 divided by 2 over 11. You can do that whatever way you want. You can take a calculator. 60 divided by 110. What is that in decimal form? Anybody know? Take it up to four decimals. 6 over 11. 0.5454. What is 2 divided by 11? 0.1818. You see what I've done so far? Converted my fractions to decimals, and then if you divide 0.5454 divided by 0.1818, you get your answer. Turns out to be 3.0. We usually take those out to about 2 decimal points. That's the math, folks. Not rocket science. If you're old-fashioned, like me, I take 60 over 110 is the same as 6 over 11. I invert the denominator, right? Does this look familiar? Did you ever learn this? And then I cross multiply, right? But they didn't invert. 11 over 2. The 11s cancel. I get 6 over 2, which is 3. Same answer. I don't care how you get it, but if you take this change over the average, that to me is a whole lot simpler than that stupid formula in the textbook. Price 1 plus price 2 divided by 2 in parentheses and plus and minus. And why do we need to make this complicated? Okay so far? One last point. Is this going to be a positive or a negative number? Well, what happened to the price? If we go from A to B, what happened to the price? It dropped. So this was a negative change. And anytime you have a negative change in price, what happens to quantity? You have a positive change. So anytime we use this equation, if the change in price is negative, the change in quantity is positive, and if the change in price is positive, the change in quantity is negative. What does that tell you about this number? Negative or positive?
Negative.
Always negative. Always negative. The price elasticity of demand is always negative. Always less than 0. Even if we don't write the negative sign, you're expected to remember that this coefficient is always a negative number. So let's do a couple of them just for practice. Price one, price two, quantity one, quantity two. Price one is $18, quantity is 134. Price two is $15, quantity two is 168. Use those price and quantity figures and calculate the price elasticity of demand. Change over the average divided by change over the average.
When we do our final answer, you just want us to do it to one decimal place or?
Take it out to two decimal points.
So being that we know that the elasticity of demand is always going to be a negative number, do we have to write, like on our assessment, do we have to write the negative, or will that already be?
Well, I would tell you always write the negative just to be safe. You can never be wrong that way. What does a little tilde mean here over the equal sign? Approximately. I rounded this off. It was 1.2387 or something like that. I rounded it off to 2 points, no big deal. Tell me, please, is there anything not clear about that calculation? Do another one.
So you want us all to have 3 numbers?
I took that one to 3. If we want to take it to 2, we just go point 1 by
I don't know if
point
you
1.
have a set one that you want us to do like for tests and stuff or.
Yeah. Your tests are multiple choice, so you'll be choosing the right answer. You won't be, as long as you got it right, you'll see it in a hurry. Okay, questions so far? Not advanced math. Just remember the procedure. If I were in a study group, I'd get my 3 people together. Each one of us would make up 5 of these. We'd share them and work on them, and then we compare our answers. Once you've done this about 15 times, it is sickening. It is nothing to it mathematically. Okay? Now, the interpretation's a little more to remember. Here's what happens. Make sure I'm still on the board. If you do this calculation, and its absolute value, what does absolute value mean? Disregard the negative sign. Without regard to the negative sign, if the absolute value is more than 1, such as on the right-hand calculation, 1.24, if the absolute value of the coefficient is more than 1, we say, aha, this is an elastic demand. If, like the left-hand calculation, the absolute value is less than 1, then we characterize that as inelastic.
Would that ever be equal to?
If it's equal to 1 exactly in absolute value, we say this is the unitary elastic demand. Okay so far? Let me go back and draw that demand curve we had a while ago. Draw it kind of big. Here is a straight line demand curve, and we draw it from one axis to the other. We identify the midpoint. We know that in the upper half of the demand curve, the demand is elastic. That means if you have 2 points up here and you calculate that coefficient in absolute value is always going to be more than 1. That's an elastic demand. If we calculate that coefficient for 2 prices down here below, we're in the inelastic portion of the curve. And the coefficient, when we calculate it, will always be less than 1 in its absolute value. So for the calculation remaining on the board here, where it came up 0.11, we know that these 2 prices are somewhere in the bottom half of the curve. Okay so far? Sure.
Explain unitary elastic again.
Unitary elastic is what occurs right at the midpoint. Or it will occur if you have 2 points that are the same distance from the midpoint. If they're equidistant from the midpoint, you'll get 1.0 for your coefficient. All of this is laid out in the videos, and I think maybe even there may be a PowerPoint or 2 on it. So you can go over it again if you need to. There's one more element to this I need to add. Leave this second calculation up here with the numbers. The other thing we want to add here is the concept of total revenue. How much money do I bring in at each price? Total revenue is the price you charge times the number of units you sell. Price times quantity. So using this example up here, what is the total revenue at point 1? It's price 1 times quantity 1. That would be 31 times 412. See how much that is.
12,772.
Not that I don't believe you, but $12,772. What is the total revenue at point 2? $15,998. Everybody see where those numbers came from? Okay. Here's the relationship. What did I do to the price?
Increase.
The price increased. What happened to the total revenue? It also increased. Anytime you raise price and make more money, you are down here in the inelastic range. If you raise price, your total revenue will rise. If you lower price, your total revenue will fall. Oops, price. Price and total revenue move together. They either both increase or both decrease. Okay so far? What do you suppose is true up in the elastic range? In the elastic range, if you raise price, your total revenue will fall. If you lower price, your total revenue will rise. That's a lot of stuff. There's a ton of questions wrapped around all of that information. Yes, ma'am.
You said a unitary elastic can be over 2 points. Is there a chance that you could have a rise and a fall where they equal the same thing? Or revenue rise and falls?
Good question. In the unitary elastic range, if I go from this price to this price, reducing price, or if I go from this price to this price, raising price, in either case, anytime I change price up or down, the total revenue will not change. It will stay constant. Look at the demand curve on the board now. $8.05 units, $5 8 units. Calculate the elasticity of demand between those 2 points.
Unitary elastic.
Calculate the total revenue at each price. So you see what I'm talking about unitary elasticity? It's 1.0, and if you calculate both total revenues, they didn't change. Price changed, total revenue didn't change. Can I erase the right-hand board? Part of the board? Last little calculation here. This is a twist on the calculation part. I'll give you the price elasticity. You tell me what that means for price and quantity. What do we do with this thing on the right? We write down what we know. Price elasticity is the percentage change in quantity over the percentage change in price. Write in the numbers we know. We know this number is negative 1.60, and we know the price is a negative 8%. Calculate the change in sales, Q. How to solve that?
Multiply
Just cross multiply. Question mark equals negative 1.6 times negative 8. What is that? It's positive 12.8. That is the percentage change in sales. Sales will increase by 12.8%. If I reduce the price by 8%, given that my price elasticity of demand is 1.6, I should increase my sales volume, number of units sold, by 12.8%. That would be nice information to know in a business. Because one of the biggest challenges in business is if I raise my price, will I make more money or less? My taxidermy partner and I used to fight about that every year. Deer season starts in August in South Carolina. And about July, we'd sit down and say, what do you think we ought to charge for deer head this year? We charged $350 last year. What do you think we ought to do? And I'd say, well, let's go to $375. And she'd say, no, let's go to $480. Well, what the hell? You'll lose all our business. She said, no, they'll pay it. I said, we're going to lose business. And she said, well, we're going to lose some customers, but we're going to make more money with fewer customers. Who do you suppose was right?
You.
Hell no. She was right most of the time. Here's the way that story goes. You'll see this on the video if you watch it. It's a true story. We were doing seminars for business, for land surveyors. You know what a land surveyor does? He goes out and measures where your property line is. And he puts little flags or stakes in there so you know. So if somebody's built a barn partway on your property, you go after him. And he comes back to you and he tells you, here's your property lines. Here's where somebody built over in your property or whatever. And here's how many acres you have, 6.74. Now, based on your acreage, you can sell your property. So it's very important to know exactly where the property lines are and how much property you got. And very important to know that nobody has built into it. It's important work, and it's very precise work. So we got a room full of these surveyors. My partner is a surveyor. I don't know nothing about surveying, but I know about business a little bit. So we're talking to the surveyors. And we finished, it was a 2-day seminar, and we finished the first day. And there were, 15, 20 guys, almost all guys there. Sharp guys, too. And we finished up for the day, and they're all walking out of the room. The guy walked up to us. He says, fellas, how about we go down to the bar and I'll buy you a drink? I want to ask you a question about my business. Sure, why not? So we go down to the bar at the hotel. We sit down, we're having a drink, and he says, here's my problem. He says, I got a small company. He says, a surveying crew, is 3 people. 3 people go out in the woods with their instruments and they measure the property lines and all that stuff. He says, when I send out a survey crew, 3 people, he says, I charge $30 an hour for that crew. He says, that's the average going rate. This is a lot of years ago. Probably more like 200 now. But he said, we charge $30 an hour, just about what everybody else does around here. I said, okay, good. He said, but here's my problem. My survey crews are working 80-hour weeks. Now this is out there in the Florida, or this is Alabama, out there in the woods, fighting through swamps, fighting rattlesnakes and yellow jackets. It's a hot, miserable way to make a living, especially in the summer. And when you do it for 80 hours a week, it will wear you out. And he says, I don't know what to do. He says, I'm afraid to raise my prices because all my customers will go to my competition. My partner looked at him and said, look, why don't you double your prices? And his eyes got big, and he said, do you think I'm insane? What'll happen if I double my prices? I'll lose every damn customer I got. Ain't nobody going to pay $60 to me when they can go somewhere else and get it for $30. Well, you think you're going to lose all your customers? He said, well, I got a few that have been with me from the beginning. He said, they'd probably pay it, but not many of them. Well, what if you lost half your customers? What if you lost half your work? What if you got your crew to where they were only working 40 hours a week? Lost a lot of business, but are you better off or worse off? It's a total revenue over here, isn't it? You're making $2,400 a week on that crew now, and guess what? For half the work, you'd be making the same kind of money. And the conversation got very quiet. He started studying me. He looked up and he said, let's have another drink. He said, I don't know. He says, I think I'd lose more than half. You really think so? I don't know. And we left it there. And we finished, laughed, had a good time chatting. The next day, came to class, cordial, very pleasant. Everybody shook hands and they left. And about 6 months later, we're here in Gainesville at the office, and the phone rings, and it's the same surveyor from up in Alabama. And he says, this is so-and-so. Y'all remember me? Yeah. We saw you at the seminar up in Montgomery. He said, yeah, that's right. He says, you remember the advice you gave me? I said, we didn't give you any advice. We told you to consider what if. He said, no. Y'all told me to double my prices. We said, no, we didn't tell you to double your prices. We asked you to think about what would happen if you did. He said, no, y'all told me to double my damn prices, and I just thought I'd call you and let you know I did. He said, I lost 80% of my business. We got real quiet. I said, well, and he let us hang there. He had to let us hang there for 30 seconds. Man. It was total silence. We figured he was just so steaming mad. And then he started laughing. And he said, and then they started coming back. He said, and a lot of them came back, and I got a problem. He said, what's your problem now? He says, well, I'm charging $60 an hour, and my crews are back to working 80 hours a damn week. He said, I'm making more money than God, but we're working ourselves to death. I don't know what to do. My buddy Ted said, well, look, if you doubled your prices, you'll have to act your business. And he did the same thing. He just started laughing. The last time we talked to him, I don't know what his competition had done, but he had gone from 30 to 60 up to $100 an hour. And he was coining money. He had all the work he wanted. Turned out his customers, when they would come back to him, they'd say, golly, damn, you're expensive. But you're kind of amazing, too, because you do exactly what you would said. You finish it on schedule. You do excellent research down at the courthouse. You are very precise in your calculations and your legal interpretations, and you're worth every damn dollar of it. And so he was having a ball. What can you tell me about the demand curve that was facing him at $30? Where was he on his demand curve?
That was a high. Man.
Here's his demand curve at the time. Where was the $30 price? Up high or down low? Very low. He was way down in the inelastic range. As he began to raise his price, he moved further and further and further up. Here's the midpoint. If you're down here on your demand curve, do you want to be there?
No.
You never want to be in the inelastic part of the demand. Because if you'll raise your price, you'll make more money for less work or selling less products. You never want to operate in the inelastic part of your curve. It's nice to do the research and say, whoa, I got an inelastic demand. Cool. Good, Moose Breath. Now raise your price. Okay? If you're operating down here, you are underpricing your product. You always want to be somewhere in the elastic range. And unfortunately, in business, we never know where that is, at least many times, because we can't do the research and it's trial and error. Oh, I'll raise my prices and see what happens. Got away with it. Let's raise them again. Oh, we're losing too much business. Let's drop them back down. And they play that guessing game. But the object of the game is to get out of that inelastic range and make more money for less work. Keep that in mind, because we're going to come back and talk about this quite a bit. And this applies not just to a business. This applies to you personally in managing your career and going to job interviews. What are you going to say when I'm interviewing you to work for my company and I say, so how much do you want? What do you think I ought to pay you? This has got some application there. You want to think about it. So we'll come back to that, okay? See you Wednesday, I hope. Take care.